Tyrant, a cruel and oppressive leader who is unrestrained by law or constitution. Tyranny, with its oppressive grip on societies throughout history, serves as a cautionary tale reminding us of the perils that arise when unchecked power falls into the hand of a single leader. Understanding the hallmarks of a tyrannical leader is not just an academic exercise, but a vital necessity in preserving the principles of democracy and safeguarding the rights and freedoms of individuals. Today, we will delve into the key characteristics that define tyranny, drawing on real-life historical examples to illuminate the dark contours of authoritarian rule. From the concentration of power to the suppression of human rights and the cultivation of a personality cult, we will unravel the intricate web that tyrants weave to perpetuate their dominance. Authoritarianism, an inherent trait of tyrannical leadership, is founded on a core of centralized power, often resulting in the erosion of democratic principles. Authoritarian control is the deliberate and systematic centralization of power within the hands of a single leader or ruling elite. It marks a departure from democratic ideals, as decisions are made unilaterally without the constraints of checks and balances. The consolidation of authority often involves the suppression of political opposition, the dismantling of democratic institutions, and the establishment of mechanisms that perpetuate the ruler's dominance. Benito Mussolini's ascent to power in Italy provides a vivid example of the dynamics of authoritarian control. The trajectory of his rule, from the founding of the National Fascist Party to the culmination of a one-party fascist state, emphasizes the calculated strategies employed to concentrate power. Somewhat surprisingly, Mussolini started his career as a committed socialist. He worked as a journalist and editor for socialist newspapers, advocating for workers' rights, socialism, and anti-imperialism. Mussolini's socialist ideology was influenced by thinkers such as Karl Marx, and he was an ardent supporter of class struggle and revolutionary change. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 marked a turning point for Mussolini though. Initially, he opposed Italy's involvement in the war, adhering to socialist anti-war sentiments. However, his stance shifted as the war progressed. Mussolini broke with the socialist movement and embraced a nationalist perspective. He did this for many reasons, but one being that he believed that Italy's participation in the war would lead to national unity and strengthen the country. Mussolini's transition from a socialist journalist to the founder of the National Fascist Party in 1919 marked a strategic pivot. The party, characterized by its paramilitary nature and fervent nationalism, provided Mussolini with a platform to channel discontent and consolidate support among disillusioned war veterans and anti-communist factions. The fascist party's rise was not merely ideological. It was a calculated move to establish a political force that would serve as the vanguard for Mussolini's authoritarian ambitions. By merging nationalism with authoritarianism, Mussolini would appeal to those looking for a strong leader in the aftermath of World War I. The March on Rome from October 28th to the 31st, 1922 stands as a defining moment in the rise of Mussolini and the establishment of his rule. Fueled by the social and political upheaval that followed World War I, Mussolini's National Fascist Party mobilized tens of thousands of black shirt paramilitary squads for a strategic march towards the Italian capital. The black shirts were armed squads of war veterans known for their loyalty to Mussolini and their penchant for violence. They converged on Rome from various parts of the country, displaying a formidable show of strength and determination. The timing of the March on Rome was deliberate, coinciding with the National Fascist Party meeting in Naples and the looming threat of a general strike by leftist groups. While Mussolini didn't personally participate in the march, he orchestrated it with precision from Milan, allowing the black shirt squads to display fascist symbols and slogans, emphasizing their allegiance to the party and its leader. The calculated move aimed to pressure the Italian government and King Victor Emmanuel III, who, faced with the spectre of widespread unrest and unwilling to deploy the military against the fascists, eventually extended an invitation to Mussolini to form a government. The March on Rome did not culminate in a revolutionary seizure of power. Rather, it marked a carefully choreographed political maneuver that led to Mussolini's appointment as Prime Minister on October 31st, 1922. This strategic ascent to power solidified Mussolini's position, initiating a transformative era in Italian politics. Benito Mussolini then systematically dismantled democratic institutions in Italy by enacting legislative changes. These included laws such as the Acerbo Law, which favored the majority party, The law introduced a system of allocating parliamentary seats in a way that favoured the political party or coalition with the largest share of the vote. Specifically, it stipulated that if a party or coalition gained at least 25% of the votes in a general election, it would be awarded 2/3 of the seats in parliament. This would benefit Mussolini's fascist party. He would also suppress political opposition through violence and intimidation by black shirt squads and tighten control over the media with press laws, ensuring that it served as a propaganda tool for the regime. Mussolini eliminated political pluralism by establishing a one-party state, marginalizing opposition parties and expanding executive powers through laws in 1926 and 1928 that allowed him to govern by decree. Restrictions on civil liberties were imposed through special tribunals, and education was indoctrinated with fascist ideology. These measures collectively diminished the role of the Italian parliament, eroded checks and balances, and transformed Italy into an authoritarian state under Mussolini's rule. Mussolini's actions are a prime example of how tyrants manipulate political crises, seize power, and suppress opposition to gain absolute control. After the consolidation of power comes the violation of human rights. Human rights abuses under tyrannical rule constitute a reprehensible array of actions that trample upon the intrinsic rights and dignity of individuals. These transgressions extend far beyond political repression, encompassing the deliberate suppression of dissent, widespread surveillance, and the obliteration of basic freedoms, creating an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. The Soviet Union under dictator Joseph Stalin serves as a case study in the grotesque violation of human rights. Stalin's regime, marked by its totalitarian zeal, orchestrated the infamous Great Purge, a systematic campaign to eliminate perceived enemies and consolidate absolute control. The Great Purge, a harrowing chapter in Soviet history launched in the mid-1930s under Joseph Stalin's leadership, was characterized by the systematic and ruthless elimination of some 700,000 to 1.2 million perceived enemies. Stalin's paranoia and insatiable desire for unchallenged authority fueled a nightmarish campaign that targeted a wide range of individuals, extending from political opponents and intellectuals to military leaders and ordinary citizens suspected of disloyalty. This relentless persecution left an indelible mark on Soviet society, plunging it into an era of fear, suspicion, and arbitrary violence. At the heart of the Great Purge was the sinister role played by the secret police, notably the NKVD. This formidable apparatus became an instrument of executing arrests, conducting ruthless interrogations, and orchestrating mass executions. The NKVD, led by figures such as Nikolai Yezhov, who would later be purged himself, operated with impunity, employing tactics that ranged from surveillance and intimidation to torture and extrajudicial killings. The pervasive atmosphere of dread created by the NKVD cast a long shadow over Soviet society, stifling dissent and ensuring conformity through fear. The infamous Moscow trials stand out as disturbing spectacles within the Great Purge. These trials, characterized by staged proceedings and coerced confessions, showcase the extent to which Stalin was willing to go to eliminate perceived threats to his regime. Prominent figures, including renowned military leaders like Tukhachevsky and influential old Bolsheviks like Bukharin, were subjected to these show trials. The trials were marked by a grotesque distortion of justice, as confessions were extracted through torture or threats to family members. The subsequent executions of these once prominent figures sent shockwaves through Soviet society, solidifying Stalin's grip on power while instilling a pervasive atmosphere of fear and submission. The Great Purge, with its devastating human toll and its lasting impact on the Soviet psyche, remains a haunting testament to the depths of authoritarian excesses under Stalin's rule. The campaign of terror extended across the entire Soviet Union, penetrating various social strata. Fear became pervasive as people were coerced into denouncing colleagues, friends, and family members to escape persecution. The egregious violations of human rights were also institutionalized through the establishment and expansion of the Gulag system. This network of forced labor camps served as a sinister mechanism to punish perceived enemies and eradicate dissent. Conditions within the Gulag were dehumanizing, characterized by overcrowded living quarters, insufficient food, inadequate medical care, and rampant abuse by guards. Countless individuals deemed enemies of the state languished in these camps, enduring unspeakable hardships and often succumbing to the brutal conditions. Some historians estimate that around 14 million people, many innocents, were imprisoned in the Gulag labor camps from 1929 to 1953. The Gulag system became emblematic of the disregard for basic human rights of the incarcerated, stripping individuals of their dignity and subjecting them to inhumane treatment. It underscored the ruthlessness of Stalin's regime in sacrificing the well-being of individuals for the sake of maintaining an iron grip on power. Classic tyranny. Looming over the near-constant violation of human rights abuses under tyranny is the tyrant's cult of personality. The term cult of personality refers to the veneration and adoration of a political leader, often to an excessive and quasi-religious extent. By creating an aura of infallibility around a leader, a cult of personality seeks to diminish dissent, control public perception, and foster unwavering loyalty. Mao Zedong, the founding father of the People's Republic of China, masterfully employed the cultivation of a cult of personality to solidify his authoritarian rule. From the establishment of the People's Republic in 1949 until his death in 1976, Mao strategically crafted an image that transcended mere political leadership, evolving into an almost deified figure in the eyes of the Chinese population. Mao's cult reached its zenith during the Cultural Revolution, a tumultuous period marked by the Red Guard's fervent ideological enforcement. Mao's image adorned public spaces, and his quotations compiled in the Little Red Book became a mandatory accessory. Propaganda glorified Mao as the great helmsman, and elaborate myths surrounding his life presented him as a visionary leader with almost supernatural qualities. The cult of Mao not only stifled dissent but also orchestrated mass adulation, turning Mao into a symbol of China's revolutionary fervor. This influence extended to the education, arts, and daily life, creating an environment where allegiance to the cult of personality was not just expected but enforced. In North Korea, Kim Il-sung, the nation's founding leader, established a personality cult that transcended traditional authoritarianism. Kim's personality cult, known as Kim Il-sungism or Juche, portrayed him not only as a political leader but as the eternal and infallible leader of the Korean people. The cult was systematically woven into the fabric of North Korean society, shaping every aspect of public life. Propaganda machinery elevated Kim to near deity status, attributing mythical feats to his life stories. Tales of his heroic exploits during the anti-Japanese struggle and the Korean War were amplified, creating an idealized narrative. Monuments, statues, and portraits of Kim proliferated, and a quasi-religious fervor surrounded his persona. The ideology of Juche, emphasizing self-reliance, became intertwined with Kim's cult, presenting him as the embodiment of the nation's destiny. This cult not only stifled dissent, but also paved the way for hereditary transfer of power to his descendants, solidifying a dynastic rule. Both Mao and Kim utilized propaganda as a potent tool in constructing their cults of personality. State-controlled media played a pivotal role in shaping public perception, disseminating narratives that portrayed the leaders as visionary saviors. The fabrication of myths about their lives, heroic deeds, and unparalleled wisdom became a cornerstone of this propaganda. Whether it was Mao's purported ability to swim across the Yangtze River, or Kim's mythical birth on the sacred Mount Piaktu, these embellished stories served to elevate the leaders to a mythical realm beyond ordinary mortals. In examining the hallmarks of tyrannical leaders, it becomes evident that the relentless pursuit of power often involves intertwining the threads of authoritarianism, egregious human rights violations, and the construction of a cult of personality. Authoritarianism, characterized by the concentration of power within the hands of a single leader, manifests as a systemic erosion of democratic principles and checks and balances, as we saw with Mussolini's rise to power. Furthermore, the violation of human rights emerges as a damning consequence of unchecked power. The examples of Joseph Stalin's Great Purge stand as a stark reminder of how tyrants use fear, persecution, and systematic brutality to suppress dissent and crush any perceived threats to their rule. These heinous acts, perpetrated against their own citizens, leave indelible scars on the collective memory of nations, underscoring the dire repercussions of unchecked authoritarianism. Lastly, the construction of a cult of personality acts as a potent instrument in the tyrant's arsenal. By weaving mythical narratives, employing propaganda, and demanding unwavering loyalty, leaders like Mao and Kim Il-sung endeavored to transcend the bounds of political authority morphing into quasi-deific figures. The cult of personality not only fuels adulation, but also serves as a tool for stifling dissent, rendering populations susceptible to manipulation and the erosion of objective truth.